I hate using that word content for
Yeah.
the work. You know, I like calling it the work. I don't like calling it content because it's just such a bland term. But I realize, and I use it often, that word content is like, you do have to make quote content all the time. And while this motion shot is going on, something really beautiful could be happening in that, which is a great still, but doesn't translate as well to the motion, and you've missed it because you've locked into the motion shot. And so so you're constantly battling inside your mind, at least I am, as to when to choose to shoot one or the other.
Today I have a very special guest, Rajah Bose, who is a filmmaker, a photographer, and a musician, and he and his wife, Ellen, operate Factory Town, a multimedia production company here in Spokane, Washington. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So, Raj, can you just describe your career trajectory going back to college and leading us up to where you're at now?
Sure. Yeah, that is quite a journey. I'm somewhere between the age of the students in this class and Ira, and we've known each other for closer to Ira's age though. So I've been doing this for about, since college. So that's 20 years. I went to Washington State University, and that's actually my hometown as well. I grew up in Pullman and didn't move away, and it wasn't until I really found photography a purpose with it. I always loved taking photos. I've never had a professor like Ira, never took a class in photography. WSU's program was all art-based, and I really wanted a more practical degree, something that would get me a job basically, or at least actually I didn't care about the job so much, but it was something that I used photography for storytelling. And I found my way to the newspaper and did photojournalism for my entire time at university, and that got me behind the scenes at all the games and got you all that kind of cool access. And then afterwards, I took a job down in Tri-Cities and worked as a photojournalist down there for a couple of years, the newspaper. And then when a job opened up here in Spokane at the Spokesman Review, it was after a friend of mine had been laid off, and it was back in 2008. So that, for me, that, for all of us, that was almost 12 years ago now. And they had too many layoffs at the time, so they hired me to fill in the extra person they didn't expect to leave. And then after about 8 months, they went through another round. And so that was because 2008 was obviously we went through a recession. I found myself back out, with unemployment, similar to a situation we're in right now. Who's to know if this is a better or worse situation? But at the time, I started working for myself. I had a pretty good amount of work behind me, but it was really focused on photojournalism. And that kind of work didn't translate as well in 2008 to commercial work. I think a lot of photography now is doing that, kind of having that style. We have that photojournalism style is kind of taken over. The more documentary style. So I kind of
known as content marketing now, right? It's
yeah, I know. It's just like, I hate using that word content for the work. I like calling it the work. I don't like calling it content because it's just such a bland term. But I realize, and I use it often, that word content is like, you do have to make quote content all the time. And but back when I started a little company, and me and my partner at the time, not Ellen, somebody else, and we started our own little studio downtown, coming out of that recession, and got a few commercial clients and started learning more about that. But I actually took a job at Gonzaga. They had an opening for a photographer, and that was in 2010. So I struggled for that 2 years, just kind of making check to check and client to client. Did a lot of weddings during that time, and just that kept me afloat. Like basically my network kept me afloat, the people I knew. And actually that's still true today. Like, I pine for a time in my professional career where the majority of the people that call me are people I don't know, people that just are out in New York and they want a photographer or something. But that has yet to happen. It does happen on occasion, but it's certainly not the dominant amount of work that I've got. even today, some of the stuff I work for Alaska Airlines and do some videography for them and multi-care. And those have come about more because the people that my circle encompassed, the people I knew, started to move up in those companies or start recommending me into those areas. And so it's not necessarily like, people rarely will take a full chance on you. They're not going to see you on Instagram and then just be like, oh man, I'm ready to invest 10 grand in this person and, have them shoot something. For me, that doesn't happen. I don't know if that, I hear that happens.
But what I'm hearing, I just want to interject a moment. What I'm hearing from you, which is a really important business, really important business concept here, is this idea that your business comes through relationship with people, and the opportunities, as it's kind of that expression, all boats, rising tides float all boats. Your relationships that then those people that you've done work for get other jobs or move up, start creating some of these other opportunities, like Alaska Airlines, like a multi-care, right? And that is really, I think it's so critical that people realize that the time they invest in building good relationships will pay off dividends, as opposed to the idea that is so prevalent in the shoot and burn society, is to treat it as, oh, well, I'm just getting paid and I'm moving on. Whereas you're actually investing, like a stock market, if you will, in the increased value of your client's success as they go forward. And you're part of their success by helping it. So they're going to bring you in to do more work in the future. Does that sound like a fair assessment?
That's 100%. Yeah, that's 100% the thing. And I rarely meet somebody who doesn't think that way, because you can't work with people and know them. Even online, we create relationships and create, real friendships, and we rely on each other. So when you're working with a quote client, I only refer to clients when I'm talking to other people about them. This is kind of a word that encompasses this group of people. But when I'm working with a person that I work with, they're certainly not a client to me. Maybe when you invoice them, you think of them like that, but you don't think of them when you email them or you chat with them on the phone, you text with them. Like, our culture is, maybe it was like that in the past, where you could really think of those things as, oh, these are the people that pay me and this is my family or whatever. But I feel like for me that those two things really overlap. Lots of folks have entered into my, I don't know if it's inner circle. We have like layers of friendships or family or really tight, and then we have this next layer out. But you want to protect those folks too. You want to protect your work and your business, and you don't, with the people we work with, we're in constant contact and constant creation with them. It's not like they don't call us to like on the top of a mountain and just like, we just don't make this. We do now because we're all separate, but on the usual time, we are working completely together, with lots of crossover and lots of meetings and lots of, interactions. So, it's just like your relationships are in college or anything else. It's like these things will grow with you. You might get a different chance. I actually don't know. Some people get taken chances on and they skyrocket really quickly. But don't take that as, I guess my advice to that is, don't take that as if that happens early in your career. I think a lot of people might burn themselves in that way, thinking that that somehow they're better or something, and they feel like they can, kind of exist without their network, and you can't. If somebody brings you in at a high level, and they might be willing to like let you go for, they're like, oh, this is the person of the moment, I need to work with him. Like if you have a cool style and if your stock is rising really quickly, big names will come along looking for you, like the Nikes or, whoever, who's doing cool work. But you want to hold on to those just as tight. Again, that's not my world. I rely on, and that's largely not a lot of the Spokane photography and videography world. We have a network and we work within it.
Actually, it's really, really interesting about this concept, because I think what you're pointing out is we live in a world with particularly social media where we're focused on accumulating followers, accumulating friends, likes, and all those sorts of things. And we live in a world with automation where we can mass email thousands and thousands of people information about our portfolio and our work. But what's interesting is it is not a substitute for having strong relationships. And there's a movement in the thought leadership about entrepreneurship that CEOs of major successful companies are now adopting a strategy of sitting down and handwriting 5 letters to 10 letters a day to their key people they want to keep relationship with. And if you did that on a daily basis, I actually did a blog post about this last week. If you did it on a daily basis, you would have, I think the math was like close to 1,000 meaningful relationships after a year. And the reality is, how many clients can you really satisfy? Right. How many clients do you have time to fill? That you can't even fill 1,000 clients' needs.
There's no way.
So therefore, instead of thinking mass and thinking all this, got a mass broadcast, really this mindset of keeping core relationships and growing organically through them is a really powerful concept in business. So good job. I think it's one of the things I really admire about you.
Oh, thanks, man. I mean, we just work within the bubbles that we're given, I guess, and we strive to push those bubbles out. We really, it's not like we also are frustrated by the idea. I think a lot of people anywhere you work, you'll be frustrated by this, even if you work in LA or in New York. I think people get stuck in their bubbles and they always yearn for something beyond that, Not met a person, regardless of the success, that didn't want to grow to something better. And so, but that certainly is something that Ellen and I think about a lot, about the Spokane bubble or the Washington State bubble. Like, our bubble has grown. Like, when I was here, when I started that first business 10 years ago, our bubble was around like a very small network. And I didn't know anybody in that first year, because I only lived here for 8 months before I was, kicked out the door. And so going to Gonzaga, I grew my network like exponentially in that time. I mean, I was there almost 10 years. I was there for 8 years. But in that time, I got to know so many people in the music scene and the art scenes, including Ira. We've been coming to his classes for, years now, and just expanding that bubble, just, literally one relationship at a time. And, not taking those relationships for granted, like, when you see folks out in your worlds, wherever you meet these people, that's where you're going to meet them. It's not like you have to go find specific people. Everybody knows somebody, and if you show you're a quality person, you're versus like if you got the best portfolio on the block, but you're, kind of a dick, like, or this is for putting this into posterity, but like if you're not somebody who's willing to work with folks, then you're gonna get passed on. They might work with you once, but if you're hard to work with, that goes around really fast, especially in a small community like this. And it's back
to that. They have to know you, they have to like you, and they have to trust you. And so if you're difficult to work with, that's going to create a problem. You're not going to last very long in this business.
Nope. Or any business, So
I want to backtrack.
But this one's very person-centered.
Yeah. Excuse me. I want to backtrack just a little bit, because I think what's really interesting is you came into this career field through photojournalism, early 2000s, which was this really dramatic, tumultuous period for photography transitioning to digital photography, as well as in the newspaper business and photojournalism. Could you talk a little bit about where did you start to bring in the multimedia skill set to your work?
So back in this is early on. This is going back to time before most of you guys, and I assume some of you are closer. It's a wide range of ages here. But back in 2005, that's when I was working down in Tri-Cities, and Tri-Cities is a pretty classic place. It's a pretty conservative area, and the newspaper was thriving there at the time. They were doing so well, while other newspapers were really struggling, and they were building things up, and so they're really taking chances on new tech. And so we were doing some work with a program then, which was basically just making slideshows. It was really popular at the time. It was called Sound Slides, and it really just allowed you to bring audio in and photos in, and then do like push in, push out, kind of like really basic effects, stuff that iMovie certainly, you know, kills, you know, and with a couple basic functionality. But at the time, it made really easy slideshows that could be pushed to the internet really fast. And so we did a lot of that, and then soon, once we really had the ability to have video, once Canon added video to their first DSLR, the 5D, that camera really, you know, technology often like Apple always says, technology always allows innovation, and it allowed innovation widely with a lot of folks. But it wasn't until I got up here to Spokane at the Spokesman Review that they were doing a lot of, you know, video photojournalism. And so that's where I was able to experiment more. They had a whole department. They were doing podcasting, basically. They weren't calling it that, but they had a radio station within the newspaper at the time, and the editor at the time was really investing in that. And it was kind of one of these examples of like, they were too early, you know, like had they done that like 5 years later, podcasting, as we know, is like such a hot market right now. And they were just a little bit before the curve, actually. And they had to like, it worked for a little bit, but it didn't generate any money. And, you know, now shows like now the New York Times has a daily, you know, show where, you know, all these places are having podcasts internally, and they're working really well, bringing in lots of revenue. So I didn't do the radio side, but we were doing a lot of video and putting all them on the web. And, you know, the newspaper it's a slow moving beast. Even now it's slow moving, and it's hard for an old organization, especially that one, to really adapt. And you've seen plenty of them go under in this time. And so trying to figure out which technologies worked, what was going to be the thing that worked, we were trying a lot of stuff. And so that's where I kind of got at least the interest of my boss. They were giving me time to shoot stuff on company time. So that was kind of step one. I had already had a lot of it, like growing up, I made movies with my friends, and you know, just, you know, making gangster movies and things like that. And just like, we had a lot of like, that was always a fun side, but it was certainly like deep in me to want to have that motion. And, you know, I almost tripped backwards into photojournalism, still photography. And so I was never attracted to the broadcast side, because WSU has such a good broadcast program. But the thing about broadcasts that really, you know, looking back, I didn't think this at the time, but it didn't feel authentic. And the authenticity that we were kind of based on my newspaper experience, and then bringing kind of motion journalism into that format, it allowed for like basically short documentaries. You know, in the beginning, they weren't deep at all. You know, they were pretty simplistic. You know, I can remember some of the early ones. A guy had a pet pig or something like that. And it's just like, you know, silly stuff, but it would get clicks. But that's what greased the wheels. Like, again, my career has been like steady, you know, slow upward. I feel, you know, I feel like I've been successful, but it's never had these like super big jumps. So around that time, being in Spokane, we had a $48 film festival that started or was going on, and I did that a few years in a row, and met a lot of cool folks in the business, and are doing this kind of on the side. And, you know, in the beginning, the gear was kind of the limitation, and as the gear became plentiful, and as phones be able to, you know, record high enough, you know, and quality content, and everybody had access to that stuff, you know, these kind of like people were able to make more and more films. And there's multiple film festivals in this town that do short. Do you guys know what the 48-hour film festival is?
Or the 50-hour slam?
50-hour slam, but there was also one called the 48-hour film festival that was put on by North by Northwest for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's that?
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, it was. It was around the time I got here in 2010 or something, and I think they've shuttered it by now, because they just they focused on their. It was basically one person within the organization running it, and he moved on, and is now running his own company. So 50 Hour Slam was a group of folks that wanted to have their own and didn't want to have the limitations. They didn't want it being run by a local company. So it's basically a nonprofit group that runs it now. So if you guys are interested in like motion visuals, the 50 Hour Slam is such a fun event. I know they just had it. I just got an email for judging. It just came out. Of course, it's been done in quarantine. So this year it's a little tougher what they had to do for their criteria, but you basically get like 5 criteria and you have 50 hours to make an entire film from beginning to end and submit it. So
I want to backtrack.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, so you came into the multimedia and the video work from photojournalism, from photography.
Yep.
What were the challenges that you faced in learning the multimedia and the video work?
The interesting thing about doing the crossover is meaning the crossover from stills to motion. Because once the cameras had the ability to do both in one place, a lot of people just started asking for it as a side, right? They're like, oh, you got that camera, right? So would you mind just getting a couple clips or, make a little short for us or something like that? And in the beginning, it's just like, oh yeah, of course I'll do that. It sounds easy. And it really, I thought it was easy until if you want to make quality storytelling, you're really thinking with 2 different parts of your brain, in the sense that when you shoot photojournalistically and documenting a situation, you go about it differently. You're looking for these single moments, and you're looking for little details, and you shoot differently. I shoot largely with a wide-angle lens, just on the technical side, and on the motion side, your style ends up starting to be different. It's hard to have the same exact style or eye for both of those things. And so this is why you don't see a lot of people who do both, I think. It was always a question to me, like, oh, how come you don't see a lot of photographers making movies, and vice versa? You just don't see a lot. And especially some people who are really, really focused on their craft, honed their craft, and are at a very high level. So that was probably, like I said, at first.
What are those stylistic differences, real quick? Just kind of.
What's that?
What are the stylistic differences you're talking about between the still photography and the video?
Oh, so with video, you're being asked to do, or you're being asked to really focus your story over a period of time. And so most of the little films we make, are 2 minutes, 3 minutes long, and then you have to capture so much more content. There's that word. You have to capture, but in content in the sense that you have to capture, this footage, and it has to relate together and it has to work together. And so, the closest thing these two work together is like photo story and then a cinematic piece, or, a video piece. And the photo story requires all the different lens choices, finding all the details, finding the wide angle, establishing shots. They are similar, but doing one it almost takes fully your entire time. And so to flip over to the other one and like, oh, I'll grab a couple video shots, I'll grab a couple motion shots over here. While this motion shot is going on, something really beautiful could be happening in that, which is a great still, but doesn't translate as well to the motion, and you've missed it because you've locked into the motion shot. And so so you're constantly battling inside your mind, at least I am, as to when to choose to shoot one or the other. I did this on a short documentary project going to Rwanda with Healing Hearts Northwest. This was about 3 or 4 years ago now, and it was a really interesting group. They help. Thank you, Ira. They help people who have rheumatoid heart condition, which is a deterioration of the heart valves, and happens widely in Africa, where people don't have access to penicillin, which solves sore throat. And that sore throat, if it's allowed to go on for years, it'll actually move to the rest of the body and actually attacks the heart valves. And then after a few years, you die because your heart is working so hard. And so these people, penicillin is like $2, in these countries, and they can't pay that much. So years later, they have these issues, and the only way they can be fixed is if a heart surgeon goes in, does open heart surgery, opens up the chest, and it's just not even something that most doctors can do there. So we went there with a group of people, and they had been going for a couple of years, and I wanted to photograph and make a short little doc with it, like a motion doc. And because I think both ways, and I can't ever, this is the hard part about me being a documentary filmmaker / photographer, is I have a really hard time when I'm somewhere not removing myself from both points of view. I'm always seeing both. So it's a blessing and a curse, I guess. But in that, I had enough time to spend with both. I had one camera, and it wasn't even a good cinema camera, like by any means. It was a Nikon at the time, and those just, they're at the very bottom of the cinematic abilities or the video abilities, but they can do both. And I just went with a very small amount of cameras, no drones, no extra, big, the thing I'm shooting on right now is actually, the camera you're watching me on right now is actually a much bigger thing that I've bought since. And I had it down to a very simple kit because I wanted one camera and I wanted to be able to do both things. And it was only because I had so much time there. I had a whole week and a couple of days in the country and in the hospital where it was like, 10, 12-hour days at a time. We were doing surgery after surgery after surgery, that I was able to capture enough. Because on certain times I'd just be like, okay, this is gonna be photo time and this is gonna be video time. And I mean, I'd be flipping all the time, but I would not recommend it to anybody by any means. It's certainly an awesome way to, what I was able to bring back, I sold to the newspaper. I pitched the newspaper on a story, and they went for it. And so we did a full newspaper package, and then we put out a short little 20-minute documentary as well. But I think if I had been able to do one or the other, and again, that's a battle inside my own mind sometimes. But if we had two people there, and one was doing photography and one was doing the cinematography, I guarantee the piece would have been better. More thoughtful in what you were able to capture. I think so much wasted energy, so much wasted time in your own head, in my own head, was happening because it was stressing me out to be able to go between both. And, I was losing one moment for another.
Well, what's interesting about that is the fact that there was redundancy and repetition of process that did allow you the opportunity to film it and also photograph it, because you knew you were going to get another go at it with another session, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was definitely okay, I'll photo. It was almost like I hadn't worked this all out in my head, but there was so many stories going on because every person they did something like 12 surgeries in that time, maybe 15 surgeries in that week. And so some days there was a couple. And so watching the stories and trying to figure out who was going to fit where. And that wasn't obvious in the beginning. It wasn't just like I could just like call these folks up and ask like, hey, what's your whole story? Because like the language barrier was there. And like, of course, they don't live in a city, they live in the village, and they come in and they live in the hospital for a couple of days. It was no able to pre-guess what was going to happen here. We just had to roll in and document what was happening and then kind of figured the story out later. But as the week went on, it was like, oh, this is this person this is their story. This is a young child, and they, they're the youngest patient here. So maybe that's where I'll put more of the majority of my video work on. And then this other person is like, oh, this older person, they don't have they have a lower chance of surviving. They're in their 40s already. And so maybe I'll photograph this. It was kind of arbitrary sometimes, it was just like, I accidentally started with one and I was like, okay, let's go down that path. And again, it came away with, I don't know, 10,000 photos or something like that to look through and hours of video footage and, cutting that is, was just like, okay, you gotta get brutal. You just gotta like, okay, what we're going to start with, and we're just going to like, all sorts of great stuff is not going to make it through. Because that story is going to be put in this area and this story is going to be put on this medium.
So before we I'm going to ask a lot of questions about story structure in a minute, But before we get there, I'd like to know what it was like for you to transition from still to moving in terms of the audio portion of it. What was your learning curve like in recording and editing the audio?
Okay, yeah, audio is probably something that I should dedicate the next 10 years of my life to, basically, because I'm seeing like the how intense it really is, you know, to really master audio, especially, you know, the gathering of audio is so important, but also the editing of it, and you know, so many things when you're shooting documentary, I'm picking up so much, like I'm in a car ride or something like that, and I'm getting all this background noise, and I don't wish this on anybody in your audio editing experiences. Try to get clean audio if you can, but you know, you get a background drone of a car engine, you know, it can be a nightmare, or even like just a, you know, something, a refrigerator or something like that. This kind of stuff has been a huge learning curve for me. And on the last project I did, it really stripped out a lot of the quality of the audio, because there was so much other things in some of the clips. Some of them were excellent, you know, but some of them, there just was no way of getting it out, and there was no way of not shooting it with it, because we were in a car for most of the time, or we were in somebody's house and they were on a respirator, and you know, the what do you call it, was on the humidifier, you know, and it's couldn't ask somebody, like people just say like, well, ask them to turn off the refrigerator, ask them to turn off the thing, and it's like, well, this woman is coughing, she's sick, and she's, you know, 90 something years old. You're not going to ask her to turn her humidifier off.
No, but if you do ask them to turn the refrigerator off, I've got a little tip about that I learned a long time ago. You put your car keys in the refrigerator. That way you don't leave.
Otherwise you'll leave it off.
Exactly.
That's a good call, man. That's a good one. Yeah, that's real life right there. That's a real life experience. Sorry, what was your original question? It was something about.
So I just might kind of like, you know, what was your progression of learning about the audio part of storytelling, and like the progression going from just interviews to weaving in natural sound and weaving in music? Like, you know, can you just kind of describe that learning curve with those various audio elements?
We've had, it's usually just me and Ellen that work on these projects. And so we run a really small crew, and, you know, now we've certainly, you know, just now we're restricted to that. And when I bring people in, it's usually somebody to help me with the video side. And so I haven't really invested in the audio stuff as much, but it's certainly probably the biggest weaknesses of really mastering of production, is to have such perfect audio. And, you know, if you're making a music video, you don't need it, right? You just layer the music video over your visuals. And so many, you know, so many folks that are making creative content don't think about audio, you know, because they're pulling in, you know, sounds from the internet. Basically, they're downloading, you know, some sound effect packages, and they're putting them over there, you know, putting some water sounds over that. And you can really bring that up with that. But if you're really trying to capture audio on site, that is, it's really having, you don't have to have the best gear, but you have to know how to use the gear you have. You know, you have to have, like right now, I don't know if this microphone is actually working right now, but I'm running this off a camera into a camera. I've got a Rode mic here. I'm hoping this audio is high quality. It might be picking it up off my computer. I don't know what Zoom is doing, but I know that to communicate effectively, you'd never want somebody to have to, you know, kind of wonder like, what was that? You know, like you don't want people, because people will become exhausted very quickly with your video content if they can't understand it. So that audio has to be so crisp and clean. And I'm finding that as our productions get better over time, that is at least 50% of the journey. You know, I have always considered myself a shooter, and, you know, like really shoot for beautiful light and finding that, always trying to get better at that. But bringing video into it, and adding audio to still images can bring a story into a place that doesn't exist otherwise, right? Like when we're listening to the podcast, like that world is being created in our imagination, you know. And when we're showing somebody visually something, the audio needs to be able to teleport you into the actual thing. You know, it allows you to kind of go into the screen that way. So yeah, I don't know how to show that I, have had a journey there other than I've made lots of mistakes, and the mistakes that I've made while shooting something are on the verge of impossible to fix. And when you do fix them, you are so, you know what the quality could have been, and you're never happy with the final product. And so I know documentary work. I know just talking to my friend Chase, who's a documentary filmmaker, made an awesome film about a base jumper. It was at Spiff this year.
Yeah, I saw that. It was fantastic.
Before we got closed down, I got to see that and got to meet the guy, meet some of the people that produced the movie. And he said he spent months in post-production, and it was mostly audio, because he's shooting on GoPros and just really bad audio gathering equipment. And to master stuff from that, you have to do a lot of like edit and replace, remove and replace,
Well,
stuff.
and he was working with a lot of archive footage that was given to him. So like it was GoPro footage that was given to him, that there wasn't a crew that was really focusing on sound. A lot of that film is featuring a lot of archive footage that I'm sure he had to do a lot of cleanup work on. It's a fantastic film. I was very impressed.
It is such a great film. I was so blown away by it.
What's it called? Ski Frenchie.
Yeah. Super Frenchie.
Or Super Frenchie. There we go.
Yeah.
Well, so
go ahead.
No. So how do you, when you approach a story, how do you decide what natural sound you want to make sure you record?
Every story is going to be different. I think that way. When we're going in, we're working on something that I'm building right now for a business client. We're shooting a lot of, we're getting a lot of interviews, and then we're just layering a lot of sound from nature. And so a lot of that time, you go outside, get some rain sounds or get some bird sounds, and you layer that in and come to the master mix on a computer. Like sometimes you're not thinking about that as much while you're gathering it. Audio, if I had more time to gather audio, and like I think having a dedicated person for audio, I have gone out and just gathered audio myself, just gone out to a river and got these things. But these kind of clips are widely available too. You can find good, audio on the internet. And so I recommend getting having a good backbone, like just there's thousands of sites like this, I'm sure, but I can send you guys the one I use. It's quite cheap. It's only $10 a month, and, unlimited downloads. And, it's just like whenever you need more, to bolster the sound, you need like a big, you need some waves sounds in there. You need some like natural, clean outdoor nature sounds. It's hard to get at my house because I got a freeway, just like less than half a mile from here, and we hear it. So like getting that clean nature is like, you got to go get that. And so building that and capturing it is, I don't try to work myself in that way. I know I'm not an audio specialist, and if we were to work on a project that was highly needed, we would bring an audio person in, that was somebody who was dedicated to having a real, like with the camera, the inputs and the preamps, they're decent on a mid-level camera. But as you go down to having a very simple, like a DSLR, those preamps are really basic, and the mics you put on them are just not, they're professional enough for, vlogging or something like that, but they're not going to be able to pull off, high production sound. So hiring somebody, or if you want to move in that direction of gathering great audio, that is something that is 1,000 times worth it for your final productions.
Well, I'm really glad to have you say those things and to be here with us, because I think you reflect really what our digital media production program, where we're at, which is we're focused primarily on smaller stories, tend to be focused on smaller production teams, as in like do it yourself, or in your case, you're working with Ellen. And it's that niche that's in between. it's just before you get into major cinematic filmmaking, where you would have a separate audio engineer and a separate cinematographer.
Mm-hmm.
It's that kind of, I mean, there's a reason why they call it the platypus workshop, really. It's this kind of in the middle, need to be good at a lot of different things, and ultimately need to be really powerful at communicating. And that it's kind of like you're a decathlete. You're not going to be an expert in every category, but it's the sum effort to tell a compelling story with visuals and with audio that you're pulling it together, and you're doing a phenomenal job. I'm just really impressed.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm learning along you guys, alongside. And like I said, this has been a long journey for me. Starting, if I look back at those early productions, it was just microphone on top of camera and go, like interviews. We didn't have lapel mic setups and things like that. And even though the higher up you go, there's no amount of money you can't spend on camera gear and audio gear. There's no top. I feel like I always spend more money. So, but you need to, just having the thing is, it's the diminishing returns. Once you have the thing, a microphone that clips here, it could be the worst quality mic out there, and it's still going to be better than the camera mic across the room, because it's going to be close to it's going to be close to the audio right here. So you don't need to spend all that money, and you need to balance. But if you're thinking about buying a camera, I think this is some of the better advice I have gotten off of different vlogs out there is, don't only look at the camera. You need a camera if you're a photographer, if you're doing visual stuff, but but don't spend, if you got whatever amount of money you have, don't spend, 90% of it on the camera. Think about like all the other things you're going to need. Like right now I'm being lit by a huge softbox light, and there's one in the background, and it makes this scene look really nice. But with those things off, like we'll just turn them off really quick. It's like, like right away, that light helps us like tell the story more than the actual quality of the camera I'm shooting on. So I ratcheted up. I started with a very basic kit camera, in the beginning, and it was capable. And as the business I grew as a cinematographer, a photographer, all those tools were added. And now I have a studio full of stuff, and it's like in this COVID moment, I've actually gone through and cleaned house on stuff, just having things. I get stuck in, I don't know how you guys are watching vlogs, but I get stuck like, ooh, look at that thing. I need to buy that, and then you bought this thing that you rarely don't even use. You bought it because somebody said it was cool. And then you get it and you're like, well, it's cool, but I don't use it. Like, what's the point of having a tool I don't use? And so we can be over tooled now. You can have way too many things. And I think like anybody who's like any person who's ever, worked in a garage or something like that, it's like, oh, look, flashy new tool. I need this thing that is a hammer, but it's 10 times more expensive, but it basically is a hammer, like.
I like to point out
how many hammers do you need, basically?
Your cell phone will do editing that really, the greatest movies of all time were spliced together by cutting film and taping it, gluing it together. Like, we have such sophisticated tools that even the most basic tool will do a really good job if you're really focused on the story rather than the technical. And that is a segue to really talk about storytelling, story structure. And I know that you, while you were working at Gonzaga University, you decided to get a master's in creative writing. Talk about, your evolution of storytelling and your how you deal with story structure in your video work.
Before we move to that, let me just, one movie that I watched a few years ago that was shot completely on the iPhone. I don't know if you guys have heard of this movie. It's called Tangerine. It's a wild movie. Later I think the guy who made that movie made a movie called The Florida Project that wasn't shot on a iPhone, but by watching them, you forget, you get lost in the experience of the actual storytelling. And so like, as important as a nice camera is, like, you're not going to find somebody that's zooming in, looking at the pixels. You're not going to see somebody like that is totally second or tertiary information. It's only because our biggest movies are made by, folks who are willing to invest millions that we shoot on these expensive cameras, but don't let the tool.
You are muted at the moment. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
All right. audio just changed. There you go. Now, what's just funny there is because I was using this. Here's an audio issue. You can hear me right now?
Yeah.
So this is what I was using a second ago.
Sennheiser G3 or?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just a little mic that goes here, right? And it pipes into the camera. And this is how having the best tools aren't going to serve you all the time. Perfect example. And now I'm on the camera mic that is a nice mic. It's directed right at my face. It's only like 2 feet away, so the quality is probably okay if it's not blowing out, if it's still like not peaking. So anyway, so good example of like you can be over tooled like this and still, fail. If I hadn't been monitoring that and we did an interview and I got back and I was like, oh, half the interview is not there, that's gonna be a pretty big problem in the movie. So
did your battery go low on that Sennheiser?
Yeah, so the other side of this, the receiver side of this one is going, but the other one's dead. So,
okay, so yeah. Well, what's interesting is every so often I'd get this sort of sound, and I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to interrupt, but I was thinking to myself, oh, I think he's got a battery going dead on the mic, because that's what'll happen, particularly with those Sennheiser lavaliers. And I think one of the challenges is if you're recording video by yourself, quite often you find it sometimes difficult to maintain headphones to be able to hear the audio. Where I want to have an interview with somebody, I can't have headphones on and will hear them and everything. It just becomes a difficult thing. But every so often I'll take a break to just check audio, because it just kills you. You get this great soundbite, great story, and you go to play it back and edit, and it's, or in this case, it went completely mute at that point. So.
Right.
All right. Well, this is a great teachable moment. Thank you.
Exactly. And it happens to me all the time, especially when we're running and gunning. If you're trying to monitor and have an interview with somebody, it's like, I got to keep my mind in two places, completely different places at once. So I have to both understand what you're saying, listen to what you're saying, interpret what you're saying, and then come up with my question to come back to you with, while also wondering about like all the technical stuff going on my camera and if the audio is running and all these things. And those two things will ruin a great interview, bar none. It's better to have somebody else do the interview and you put yourself on the camera. It's going to save the day every time. If you can have a great interviewer is the best thing to have, but a great interviewer, with their mind, in two different places I've seen the result of it and it's not good, and I'm not saying I'm a great interviewer, but like starting at decent and then being pulled away in that way, you're just fighting yourself. So, on top of all the technical things we've talked about, being present in the moment when you're making something and being able to, that's why directors like to hire somebody to run their camera and run their sound and run this thing and hold that light and do this other thing. And they're just there in the moment thinking about, was that a good performance or not? Was that the thing I wanted to capture or not? And that's why movies are so, there's such a different process to how we daily work over here with our company.
Well, when you were talking about the initial jump from still to motion, one of the things that came to mind, and one of the things I struggle with, is something as simple as pulling focus, because in still photography, if I get that one shot with that beautiful bokeh, shallow depth field, and it looks great, and I capture the eyes in focus, but now I could focus that, set my camera on a tripod, but now somebody's moving as they're talking and they could be going in and out of focus, or like there's just all these other factors that once you introduce the video portion of it, make it very complicated. And when you talk about all these things you're trying to keep track in your head, it made me think about the fact that how many of us struggle to remember somebody's name at a party. And yet you have to remember their name and hold a conversation and manage all the technical aspects of recording video and audio at the same time. It's a challenging career.
It's an exhausting process to put your brain in that, at least for me. I can't speak for any other people who can do better multitasking and whatnot. I'm sure there's somebody out there who has an easier time with it, but the more I've done it, the more I've realized, you don't want too big a crew, especially for doc work. You don't want 5-6 running people around. You're going to be distracting the subject, because you're focusing on one person oftentimes in these things. But it just becomes obnoxious with multiple folks. So, a second person who's very capable is what you want, who can be assigned or takes assignment, or just who has a set of skills that is not your skill set. That way you can really focus on yours and they can really focus on theirs. And again, like that's going to be you want that magic, you got to find somebody that works well with you in that way.
All right. So let's get to story structure.
Yeah. What was the question again?
The evolution of your development of story structure, and maybe what drove you to want to pursue a creative writing degree.
Mm-hmm. Story structure. So you guys are going to school now, and I went to school and did a business degree and an advertising minor degree, and never touched anything having to do with, advertising is kind of story, but I never learned it that way. And, but story really came to me through journalism. That was like, and that's the path that I really went on until I got back to Gonzaga, where I was worked in the marketing department after 10 years out of school. And it was during that time at Gonzaga and working on and trying to really delve into being, more of a story shooter, or a story, like a cinematographer or a director, or a DOP, or whatever term you want to assign. I think it's between terms here, but I realized that, or I just thought about like, okay, I want to be better at story. I want to get more training on it. And certainly there's a great film school at Eastern. They do a lot of great stuff, and a lot of friends out there and a lot of people teaching out there. But I also felt like I was doing a lot of that work already. And not to say that I wouldn't have learned a lot of information that I did not get from what degree I ended up going after, which was the creative writing degree. And that was because I had a second interest in writing, and certainly wasn't by any means a great writer, and don't even consider myself a great writer now. But I knew that in the story, in the trying to learn more about how story works and practice it, I knew that program would give me a new set of skills that I wouldn't get in a film degree. And it's not like I felt I was an expert at film by any means, but I also they didn't have a master's at Eastern, so it would have been a second bachelor's degree. And I really wanted to go deeper, and also wanted to teach. Had to have an interest, and still do, but while I was at Gonzaga, I thought, I was teaching a class there in creative writing. That's right, in photojournalism, and I thought I'd want to expand on that over time. And so I was really trying to, for multiple reasons, wanting to have a master's degree, because it's a requirement, to teach at a Gonzaga level. So it was kind of fulfilling a couple different purposes that I wanted to do. It wasn't just literally like, I wanted to tell stories better doing this because that's the best example. It just there was a lot of things going on. Of course, he could have left Spokane and gone off to college for a couple of years. I have a friend who is at NYU film school right now, and he's doing awesome. He was a Gonzaga grad, but again, he's in a different phase of his life at the time. And I really loved the life that I had here and have here. And I didn't really want to move away and go to film school somewhere. And, because that would I would lose my business. I would lose all these other things that I had built up over time. And so I needed something that really fit a lot of different slots. And had I do wonder, different paths that, could have taken. I'm not demeaning film school at all. I think there's amazing film schools out there. And they'll give you, watching my friend Jeff, who's going to one now. It's the uber focus that he's doing on filmmaking and putting out multiple films is something that was certainly not part of a creative writing degree. But the things I learned about story are things that a lot of filmmakers don't talk about. And so in building up any skill set and, attaching it to the one that you have already, brought into your existence. So like, I feel like the uniqueness of a person's education, or the things that or however you want to, wherever you get your quote education from, that's going to be able to make you, it's not like I don't think of it anymore as like, where can I get hired? I did years ago, like, what is this education going to get me a job at this place? Or where can I work with this? And how much money will I make into this don't think like that anymore. But I think like, how can I better master a skill set of better storytelling abilities, and how can I be unique in that too? Because I think there's people kind of there's like a cookie cutter level of stuff, like, oh, I'll do this degree and then this degree and then this degree and then I'll PhD and then I'll teach at this Harvard University. Like, that's the formula to get to there, right? And those formulas certainly work. We've seen them work. All the presidents have gone to Yale or Harvard, but like we only have like we have a really strange situation we're in now, where will education be, in 10 years? What universities will, what will they become, and how will this kind of distance learning or YouTube, learning change that? And I mean,
But am I hearing you also say that the creative writing degree was really also allowing you to find your unique voice in your work? Do you have a style and storytelling that's come out of that process?
I think it's definitely, I can't tell you that. I don't know if I can tell you that part. I would say no, I don't have a unique story point, because I feel like I'm still yearning for that I, like we call it the I in what we do, right? In the visual side. They call it the voice in writing, and those things are very similar in the sense that somebody could read you or see a video you made or some movie you made and then say like, oh, I know that person. I know who that is, without knowing the name on the book cover. And I would like to, have people say that about my work, but I don't know how to do that really. I just think that, going towards your interests and trying to really get better. I'm just trying to get better.
Well, and with documentary and journalism work, really the story is dictated by the subject, as opposed to maybe a narrative storytelling where you can really bring a lot more personal flavor, maybe because you're creating everything as opposed to working with. And I've actually sat in at workshops where people talked about, well, I really try not to have too specific a style, because then I'm getting in the way of the story. I need to be able to adapt to it. What advice would you give to people beginning in multimedia journalism and documentary filmmaking and even commercial advertising video production about story, like how to develop a story?
I think you got to know your subject well. I think that's, when people write great film, it often comes from a point of understanding themselves. Most films are somewhat personal to people, even if it's a topic they're writing about somebody else. It's like being able to understand your subject, and that in a documentary sense, that's spending time with folks, and really not taking too much in with you, like even from down to like on the photo side, so I still do a good amount of photography, just trying to figure out who a person is to, have one photo explain who that person is, right? The amount of research you have to do, and some people, you're not going to be able to research them online. You're not going to be able to, just like look them up and just like stalk them on their Facebook page. They're just not going to be out there. So how do you get to know them? And sometimes that's really hard. If you're only going to have a few moments with them, it just might not be possible. But if you have the opportunity to really spend time with somebody, then you'll be able to capture and, feel who they are. Like down from, making a short documentary about somebody that might take 5 or 6 different visits with them to, showing up and, trying to learn about somebody within an hour or two, a normal portrait session. You don't want to exhaust somebody, when you're photographing them. It is an exhausting process for somebody to be photographed or be the center of somebody else's attention for so long. And so you got to create that dynamic between you and the other person. And yeah, sometimes that's just not possible. Some people just can't you can't get that deep with them, or and the other people will invite you in, and spend days or months with them over a period of time. Is that kind of
okay? So now I want to take it to the next stage. So you've gathered this raw footage, you've interviewed. Now, how do you sift it and decide the editing process to give that story structure?
Mm-hmm. You watch it. Some people like to have it transcribed. There's lots of transcription services out there. Just on a technical side, you can turn you get all your interview footage or all your footage in general, whether somebody talking, and you put that, you watch what they say. So if you had if you had an interview where you sat down with them, you watch that out, and I start chopping. I start taking clips out that I really like, oh, this is great. Highlight. Just my current process is to take a timeline and then to take chunks out and bring them up and say, like, these are the nice ones.
Mm-hmm.
Don't separate it from the full 2-hour block of their conversation, but just save them in there and then watch it back. So like, okay, that's good. I want to move that stuff over to its own thing. So it went from being 2 hours, now it's 20 minutes. Now I got 20 minutes of audio.
Okay, I want to hit the pause button right there. That is a great tip. It's funny. I'd never even thought about this before, because I will cut up. Some people will have you go. We used to do logging clips. Do you remember those days? Where you were recording on tape and you had to ingest all of it, and you had to log the time code and then set your in and out points for sound bites and keep track of that way. And then we
never did that, actually, Ira.
Oh, well, that's what
before my time, man.
That's what we used to do. So then the idea was, well, okay, you come in, you ingest it into Adobe Premiere, Final Cut, and you would set in and out points and drop it on the timeline first. And then kind of move to just laying the whole thing on a track and using the blade tool to cut up the sections and either make them into subclips, or what you're suggesting, or no, the next phase for me was then actually just having 2 sequences open, and I would cut and I'd copy and paste onto the second sequence the clips that I thought were useful. But actually, what I'm liking this idea that I think is really helpful for all of us is actually leave it on in place and just move it up 1 level. And then you could mute that bottom track and just listen to those soundtracks and then move them over to another sequence to be able to bring them and space them the way you want it to. So thank you for that. That's a great tip.
Sure. Just something I learned with lots of mistakes and trying to go back and find stuff. It's like, when I'm editing video timeline, it's very disorganized. It's just like it starts becoming a cluster real quick. And so I put together multiple timelines on this project we're working on now, and that really helps. So I have a timeline just for one video, and this other person's conversation that's got its own timeline. So I don't have 10 different people on one timeline. And then once I get my audio down, then I can start thinking about how to visualize that. So what B-roll clips do I have that I really like? And then I bring an audio track in just so I can start feeling that, that like where I might want to go with that. And I usually try to have 2 or 3 audio tracks, just because I'm not 100% sure what the mood is going to be, or if it's going to be super hopeful, or if it's going to be, super pensive, or how other people might watch it. And if they like I often get some feedback from specific folks as I'm moving down that line, and get like, oh, do you think this is too dark, or this is like more hopefulness here, that kind of stuff. And it helps to like have other folks kind of give you you don't want this process. The artistic process isn't like a democratic process. Usually, you don't get to have an entire group of people weigh in. Otherwise, you never get anything done. But it does help to have somebody who's your editor in some sense. Like in the creative writing degree, we've always talked about having great readers, and that even after doing the program a couple of years ago, one of the biggest things that you'll get from a program like that, and what you guys will get from this class, is having folks that you can rely on. And it might just be one person for you, that you meet in all of college, that or all of one program that you'll be able to go back to. And that's not something you get on YouTube. It's like the folks you come up with, the folks you learn with, those are the folks. You're not necessarily going to go back to Ira at some time in the future, though I'm sure he'd be up for it. But you're likely going to have somebody a peer, that you're going to grow with, and is going to be a great reader for you or a great viewer for you, and be able to give you good feedback on stuff. And having that for, I've slowly grown that too. And having a person or two like that who can just like brighten your, even just give you some insight on something that you didn't see is going to be one. You're going to get to a point and no one's going to say like, start over, it's going to be like, hey, that loved everything except this part really just turned me the wrong way or something like that. And even one or two comments like that. I mean, you guys have done this before. You get a little critique on something and like one idea can like totally spin you in a new direction. So don't lose that. Don't ever think that, just because your ego does grow as your work gets better, that, that other people can't give you insight. I mean, you're not going to be looking, at somebody who's starting out to give you insight if you're up here, but you want to have somebody that's like, you're looking to like, hey, look at my work. And you got to kind of drop the ego. If you ask somebody who, if I'm sending something to somebody who I really admire, then I have to, swallow my ego and say like, hey, I'm vulnerable to you in this position. Teach me, what am I missing here? And if you can get somebody's time, that is the hardest thing is like, when you ask somebody's time to watch a piece, that might be an hour's worth of their time. That's a lot, to read read a piece for somebody, that's a lot of work. So, don't squander people's time, honor it in that way. Do as much as you can and then say like, I'm at a roadblock. I need something here.
I've got one last question before I open it up. And that's, can you describe tell me about Factory Town. Tell me about the name choice. Tell me about what the ethos of that company is. And what's nice is I've shared both the Rajah Bose photography website, Factory Town, and it's been really cool to see the growth evolution. But Factory Town, it seems to me, has a distinctive voice to it. Can you just speak to how you develop that brand and that company and what that vibe is that you're trying to get out there with that company?
Yes, it is something I think about almost on a daily basis. When I'm not thinking about what camera to buy next, then I'm usually thinking about, I know you guys all get stuck in camera land and looking at B&H and stuff. So I understand we're all in the same boat there, but the brand and the, like who you are is so important out there. And even though, like I said earlier, I don't take this back, people aren't going to take a huge chance on you and just hire you because they saw your website. That's not going to be it. You're going to have to build up a real, a relationship, or at least, like you have to show that you can do something at this level. But there's two different things. And Ellen actually has her own business. She's a muralist. And so if you go to her website, ellenpicken.com, you'll see like, okay, her work is very visual in a sense that she does painting and does these large installations. And then my work is, documentary and, a lot of portraiture and, it's become somewhat corporate, but mostly is documentary based. And so that, in trying to figure out what Factory Town was and what we're still trying to figure out is it's not what it was when it started. In the beginning, it wanted to be it was Ellen and I working together. We're married and we also run this company together. And so we wanted to find something that we could use both our skill sets in, and that was also interesting to us, and it wasn't what we did before. And then but as Factory Town has kind of made stuff, we've also gotten a lot of interest from people just saying like, oh, you want to make a video for me? Like, okay, sure, I'll make a video for you. Oh, you want to do my book cover? Okay, yeah, we'll do that. So people just come to you with stuff. They hear you do a thing, they hear you're creative, and you got some skills. Like, hey, you can do this for me. Why don't you do it? Like, okay. And so you kind of that is for us has been the hard part in trying to decide what we show. And we do other stuff. Like I said, we're working for Alaska Airlines right now, and it's been tough the last couple of weeks. But we did some work, and of course they've held all contracts now. But they've been great people to work with. But it's not stuff that it's really talking head videos, and it's not. We try to put as much creativity and visual coolness into it as much as we could, but it's not stuff that you're going to see on our Factory Town website. Probably ever. Like, I just have no interest in diluting the brand Factory Town in that direction. And I say diluting because I don't want to be seen as a production company. in the sense that it's just somebody you can hire. Hey, I want to hire you. Here's how much money I have, and I need you to make this for me. Because I've done that for a lot of years. I worked at all these places, and if I could, I would work for a newspaper still, because I think, you know, you still hold your creativity so close to the newspaper. That's changed since I left, but you own your content. You know, you own your creativity at those places, versus if you work for a client, they own your creativity. Well, they don't own your creativity, but they own the product, and they own that content. And they own, you know, like, oh, actually with video, and this is one thing, let's go back to the two different things. With video, I found that working on photos, you would make the photos and you turn them in and you say, like, those are my photos. Those are my masterpieces, you know? And they were like, oh, okay, cool. We like those. Or, we don't like that one, but okay, good. It's done, right? But with video, oftentimes when you make the edit, it's not done. It can be completely re-edited into something else. And so somebody might see them and say, like, oh yeah, it's cool. I mean, I like what you kind of did there, but we didn't like the music, and we didn't like the voiceover, and we didn't like the way you graded it. So just change those couple things, and then we'll like it, you know? And then it's like, oh, that's all of it. That's all there is, right? Like to shoot footage for somebody and hand it over feels very vulnerable. Feels empty to me. Like I'm just a person holding a camera. And I never got into this to do that. I got into it to connect with people and to tell people stories. And so when we moved to video, and Factory Town is largely a video-based company, but we also have done some large installation work, and we really want to expand into an arts company, you know, a company that can provide more than just even if we were able to do their best productions, even if we're only working for Nike and, REI and like the biggest companies or whatever, and they gave us all their stuff, I wouldn't only want to be a video company for that. I really want to be an experience-based organization that brings installation artworks and, installations or, physical things to people where they can learn, and you can bring your story into it and their story and come together on something. So we've gone after a couple different, we have one project on our website we did last year. It's an art. We took over the Terrain gallery downtown and did a month-long exhibit there, and did this installation piece where it was a moving installation. You can look it up. But that was that was kind of like a new direction for us, and something that we really want to like move towards. So it's not
How'd you come up with the name Factory
Town? We wanted a cool name, and again, like this has been a story too, because Factory Town is how I think of. Well, my dad is from a factory town in India, and so I'm half Indian. And so going back to my roots, my grandfather was a factory worker, and then I'm certainly not a factory worker by any sense, but I feel like Spokane is somewhat of a factory town, though, we don't necessarily have any factories left. It's a community in the sense, and we had, Kaiser Aluminum, and there's a lot of, that mentality of the factory town is alive here. And then I kind of think about the second way that Factory Town works for me is is that I feel like within our current stage of like gig working and creative working and entrepreneurialism, that we're all kind of factory workers in like the new factory. Like we are making stuff and creating stuff, and like everybody in this chat room is in that sense, quote, factory worker. And because it's the new stuff we make. Like people don't make products anymore, so, and if you do, you're having them made in somewhere else, it's like, so anyway, that's how I think about that is,
well, I think it's brilliant because here's, I picked up on the idea of Spokane being kind of this gritty factory town, particularly with Kaiser back in the day. I love hearing about your cultural background, your family heritage of factory. And then I love this idea of we're all factory workers in some respect in this modern economy. And so there's something being communicated about the ingenuity and the stick-to-itiveness, the perseverance necessary to be successful, that I think you're communicating to a prospective client that you're gonna be there to get the job done no matter what. And then the other thing that's really amazing is your partnership with Ellen, because she is doing this large-scale mural work, bright, vibrant color. You bring in this very crisp and dynamic photojournalism and documentary film, but then you're also a musician, like crazy talented in a diverse number of areas. So I get this whole branding of creativity with grit and determination is kind of what I get, which is so much more interesting to me than if you were just being a corporate video. And I thought that was a really important point you made, that you're doing the corporate work, but that's not necessarily going to be reflected in your brand that you're communicating out afterwards. And the idea that I always tell my students that, get known for one thing, they'll assume you can do the rest. And you're not going to be put into a box of only being known for doing one thing. You're going to actually benefit from that, because people assume if you're an expert at one thing, hey, can you do this for me? And I just see the sky's the limit for you and Ellen. You're just doing some really, really fantastic stuff.
Thank you, Ira. I think one thing on that is we have found that people will come to you for lots of different things. But now we're at a stage now where we feel like we really have to tell people like specifically how we want to work. And because we'd like to move to that next level. So a lot of companies will say like, oh, we need a video, find somebody to make it for us. And they'll find somebody. And sometimes that's a small company. We feel lucky to get that work, especially working for a big brand like Alaska or Multicare. It's like, we're a small little company out there. We're just two people working at home in this home studio. And I mean, we feel really lucky to have that. But we also know that we don't want to only do that kind of work. And it's almost like we're sometimes found almost accidentally in that way. And so we've started a series, it's just kicked off. And of course, like literally shot one, and then we go COVID, and so everybody's dark. But we have another one in the can, and two more being scheduled out. And they're just little vignette stories that we're calling the originals, like our original sets of stories. And it's just to give us place to play. And that's something that I've never given myself, is until I got to be in the writing program, I never just wrote for fun. And I certainly never made films just for, well, I did when I was a kid, but I didn't do it when I was an adult. And just to get out there and use your gear, because oftentimes these cameras just like sit in a cabinet, and it's like, man, what a waste to have, expensive stuff that you don't use only when somebody calls you to use it, and then you use it for reasons you're not even that excited about. It's like, that's the travesty, of so much of what's going on with, having so many companies out there, is like people are like myself. Again, I'm blaming myself. You only got so many people to blame, and like, you're just taking that work out there, but giving yourself a reason to, not just making pictures of your dog or something, but, making real quality storytelling work. And so we're trying
That's
to.
what I admire about Dean Davis, is the fact that he keeps doing passion projects, and those passion projects end up leading to more work.
Yeah, Dean is the perfect example of that. There's no better example in Spokane other than Dean. He's pushed himself and his work forward. He was doing HDR before anybody did HDR. Then he was happy to leave that behind when that was done, and he moved on to like, this new portrait project, which is like now a national, international project. And it's only because he was passionate about something. It's like, yeah, and he's doing it, and he's been doing that same thing over and over, and it's like it pushes his work ahead. And he still makes commercial work, but you're not. It just makes him into a reliable. It's like, oh, who's Dean Davis? Yeah, he'll get it done. Yeah, you call him, he'll get it done. Well, how much does he cost? Well, he's expensive, but he's going to get it done for you. Like, oh, okay. Like, yeah. I mean, he's not. You can't. There's no ifs about it. It's like he's one of the most expensive photographers in this area. So, but that doesn't matter for people who are hiring him. So if you bring the quality and I think if you have that passion, you carry it out. A lot of people burn out in this business real quick because I think they lose the reason they went into it for. You know, it's like, oh man, I really love photography because of this or that. And it's like, when am I going to do that again? When do I get to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So thank you very, very much. I want to open this up for any questions any of you might have for our guest, Raj. Any questions?
We have something more technical.
Yeah. What's up, Austin?
Okay. So I've done weddings as well. And I kind of like, it's so stressful for the audio because I do it like all by myself. And like, I can film, I can do a pretty good job at that, but having to record the audio, it's like one of the most stressful things because like when I was looking into it before I even took this class, there was like recording it through mostly like a lavalier, which was like kind of the most like the thing that a lot of people recommended. But I also heard an easier way or like a backup, which is what I do, is I connect my Zoom H6 to a like the soundboard or whatever. So like when you're doing like these interviews or whatever, or I guess like when you're recording audio for like different situations, do you do backup audio? So you'll record like one main way and then you'll have like a backup. So you can like, if one goes wrong, you can always refer to another.
Yes. I think with audio, it is so, I mean, for me, like when Ira was like saying you guys were getting some static on this mic has been giving me some crazy problems lately, and I'm totally unsurprised by that. And I understand that, with audio, if it's not especially your main thing and you're not like monitoring it all the time, it's sitting in the corner and you're like, you go back to it after 3 hours and you're like, hey, did it work? And it didn't even turn on, oh, it ran out of batteries 2 hours ago. You're like, oh, okay, so this is now just going to be a video with music over it, So like, you don't want that to change your process. If you want to go in and you want to get the vows and you want to get the, the beautiful sound of just like, at the podium, yes, back to like always backup audio. And I think the H6 or the H4, whatever, $100, little input mic you can have, even just something up there at the podium with the priest or whatever, and he's talking into it, or having a microphone on the person who's doing the ceremony, and then having a backup somewhere else, sitting on the podium, like just having those two running that way, or mic both the bride and groom. Like, of course, I'm talking about adding more and more gear here. And I would say if you're able to mic both of them separately, then likely if one mic fails, the other one will pick up the other person because they're standing literally like this, during the ceremony. So you likely won't not have it. But yes, audio problems, audio issues. I mean, that's why there's a dedicated sound person or multiple people on movies, because it's such a hard thing to perfect, to get right. Especially if you're so, I mean, I've shot so many weddings, man, not video. I'm not a videographer at weddings, but it's so distracting. You've got your mind in 10 different places and, you already missed 3 different photos. And so you're not thinking about that audio track. 100% understand that.
What software are you using? Just real quick, what editing software suite are you using?
Yeah, I use 2. Mostly I actually use DaVinci Resolve right now. That's an awesome program. It's probably one of the most capable programs out there, and it's free. And I got into it because of the grading stuff. The grading suite on it is perfect. It's the best grading software for mastering color there is. It's professionally used on giant movie sets. High level $50 million movies, they use this. It's not perfect by any means. All software will crash on you from time to time, but Premiere was crashing on me like on a daily at some point, and I just made the decision, like, I can't go back 3 versions because I've already edited a project in version 10 and I can't go back to version 9. And so I made the decision to learn DaVinci Resolve, over a week. It's super easy. It's not complicated, but if you have a Mac, I think Final Cut X is probably the program to go with. It seems awesome. People love it.
What are you using for audio?
What am I using for audio on what?
Editing. Like when you're problem solving a challenging audio clip, what are you using to edit that?
Yeah, I use Audition right now, mostly. I've looked at Adobe product, Adobe Audition. It's pretty good. I don't think it's as powerful as some of the other ones out there, but it has some awesome ability to take out high and low pass, and also, most programs have high and low pass filters, which means to take out the high sounds and the low sounds, meaning you can get that drone out of there, that droning bass out of there, or that really high pitched stuff. But the other thing it does really well is to remove specific sounds. So it actually will process your audio and remove out like that specific hum. So if a hum is like in the mid-range, that's a nightmare because it's going to take some of your vocal away, because your vocal is going to be in the middle. Most people don't have super low voices. They have middle range voices. And so like anything that's in the middle of the wave, basically, again, no audio expert here, but it's been hard to remove certain types of sounds. Audition has been decent at it. And I know that better AI software is coming, and it is there, and it can look through your audio footage and clean it up even better. So I think we're going to come into a time now where audio editing is going to really advance itself. Photo editing and video editing is like so crazy good right now. It's like, I mean, just look at your phone on Snapchat or something. It does it for you. But I think audio editing is going to jump ahead with AI in the next couple of years.
Are you using that Alex Audio Butler AI program?
I don't know what that is.
Okay. What AI programs are you using with audio now?
I don't have one. That's the
Okay.
thing. I looked at one the other day and it was $500, so I didn't buy it. I just used Audition to clean my stuff up. So,
well,
yeah.
I'll just throw out there, people. I did bite the bullet. I watched one of these YouTube tutorials, and they were showing off this AI plugin that looked pretty amazing. I downloaded it, I installed it, I paid for it, and now I've gone back to doing it manually.
Yeah, because there's no magic bullet right now. That's
There
the thing.
is no magic bullet. No.
I think they call them AI, and because they do some kind of AI, being the machine learning stuff, but I don't think it's complicated enough for it really to. I think it's just experts. And when you're watching a movie and the audio is so crisp, you don't even notice it. That's because there's somebody that's really good, going like literally second by second, in the waves, like looking at it.
Any other questions?
So this one kind of goes back to the audio question. When you're using a lav, do you use a wireless lav, or do you use like a recorder connected to like a lavalier microphone?
I have both. I have this little system, which the Sennheiser, which I plugged in because I wanted to know. I tested it on you guys today because I've been getting that clipping feedback in other places, and I thought it was because we were getting some feedback at this one location we were at. Now I know this microphone is garbage and needs to be replaced. But I actually just bought a new system called Deity, and the Deity Mic System, and it has a dual input. It has actually, I should have used it today. It's so much cleaner and it's brand new. But it's reasonably priced. It's still like $600 for the whole thing, which is obviously not cheap. But I made the decision to buy that because it has two mics that go into one unit, and I can run it into my camera and have a third mic because my camera has two inputs on it. And this way I can put three mics on one camera, and they all go in and can be on two separate audio channels. So if you only have one on most DSLRs, you only have one stereo in, then this would give you two separate mono channels into that unit. And that way you can have two separate lavaliers. The only other way you could do that, well, one of the way you could do that is to, yes, have your Zoom H6 with a microphone popping out of it and put that in somebody's pocket. But that shit, that thing's like trying to hide this in somebody's dress or suit is impossible. But they make things like these guys that are lightly smaller and maybe like $200. I have one literally like 5 feet away, but it records internally into it and just has a simple mic. And I mean, if you look those up online, they're super. I think it's Tascam makes one of the cheapest ones. Rode has a little clip-on mic now that's really reasonable. That just like goes from. You guys have all seen this. I'm sure if you watch YouTube, you've been blasted with the Rode mic system. I mean, it's not the proest version of anything out there. The Sennheisers are supposed to be better, but like you notice, this thing is got it breaks down over time. It's got issues. So.
Are you so which shotgun mics are you using?
Okay, so shotgun on the camera right now. There's a Rode mic.
Is it the NT3 or?
I don't know what it is. It might be the NT3.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a Sennheiser one thing or another. I could look them up and send you the names. I don't know. I wish they would just name microphones like real words so you can remember, man. I can't remember all this stuff. But yes, I think a shotgun mic of any sort is going to be awesome when you're out there gathering on-camera audio. And especially if you're doing, you don't even need one of these if you're doing interview really up close to somebody, if you have a nice shotgun mic, because they're going to be close enough to that microphone, and they're so directional. Versus this is omnidirectional, and it only works if it's right literally under my chin, right? I mean, I can't teach you anything more than a YouTuber can teach you, but I can tell you what I use. And the hard part about when you have those systems that have cards in them and they record to the card is then you got to sync it all later. And so it's nice to have it on the camera with the audio in signal, so you can monitor it right there. It's working. It didn't go dead in their pocket if you're monitoring, and it's all coming into the camera. And on production stuff, I'd rather know than, if I was shooting a narrative movie, happily smaller piece. If you buy the version of this that doesn't radio signal, that just stores it internally, I mean, it's smaller, so you can hide it, and you can check it regularly to make sure it's working still. So if you have the ability to constantly check, but it's really annoying to, like, especially if you're interviewing somebody of the opposite sex, like, and you're asking them to, like, hey, can I reach in your pocket all the time, or can I just see that microphone? It's like, for anybody, that's awkward. So it's better to just, like, here you go, especially in the time of COVID, like, just give this person this thing, they put it in their pocket, you forget about it, and it stopped working because you're monitoring it on your camera. Does that help, Austin?
Oh, yeah. I was just kind of like, I kind of already knew this, but I kind of wanted to see what your opinion was on this. And then I guess, speaking of like COVID-19, what do you think this virus is going to, like, impact on, like, video and photography work for you, or I guess other creatives that are in, like, the wedding industry or corporate videos or that, photo video set?
Yeah, man. I mean, weddings on its own is such a question mark over everything. I've been talking to a couple of people because camera gear got really cheap this week. And if you're thinking, if you have a little money in your pocket, you can get some good deals because people are selling off some stuff.
I got a Hasselblad recently. Yeah.
And I bought a camera this week, but I also sold 3 cameras. So, like, I got condensed things down, and but in that, I know in talking to some of these folks out there that, people, if you're in the business of, like, movie making, like, that industry is stopped, and there's so much money in that industry that people are just dropping stuff. They're taking, like, their $50,000 cameras and they're selling them for half, and this, like, they're liquidating because there's so much money just that won't be able to be used or spent, and people are holding on to, and productions aren't going anywhere for a while. And then this other guy was buying one of my cameras. He was talking to him yesterday, and he's like excited to get this camera. It's a nice one, and he's a music video director, and he's also, like, he has a market down there in LA, and he's not in the movie side. He's more of a, like, hey, I work with small dance teams, small dance companies, and they all need content, and I'm the content maker. And so he's getting lots of calls right now. But again, like, if we're in this for 6 months, and, like, how will the well run dry? I don't know. I mean, eventually people are going to get married again, and they're probably going to want to document it, even if they don't get to have all their friends there, right? So they're probably going to want to have somebody like you, Austin, photographing that.
Actually, I want to just interject there and say history has shown over and over and over, after an extended period of crisis, there is a surgence in hiring of photographers, because there's an appreciation of that documentation format so much more. And in fact, one of my photographers I used to do consulting work with back in Minnesota, after 9/11, a year and a half later, he flew 5 employees and himself to Hawaii for a Christmas vacation to thank them. And at 9/11, he had no employees. A year and a half later, he had 5 employees and himself going to Hawaii and I said, wow, how'd that happen? He's like, well, after 9/11, people really wanted me to make these photos, the documentation. So I think there'll be a boom. And I think even with cinematography, there'll be a boom, because how many people have been binge watching streaming content? It might affect the theater segment, but there actually probably be a pent up demand for cinematography in the streaming platform. I mean, I know I've been binge watching the series Bosch on Amazon Prime.
We all got 1 or 2 of them right now.
Yeah. Any other question for Raj from the journalism students before we wrap up today?
So you said, first of all, I think it's really cool that you market your company as an art company more than a production company. I think that's really interesting. I like that concept a lot.
Thanks, man.
Especially because like my dream coming into this career was having a production company at the end. And you saying that and saying that there are work that you wouldn't put in your page, I think it's really interesting and something to look into. But also I wanted to ask, like, when you do a documentary piece, do you kind of edit in your head while you're shooting? Kind of you're thinking like, okay, I'm gonna put this and then that, and how's that process of like having in mind how the final video is gonna be while you're shooting?
It is not necessarily like a full master in my head because so many things are happening simultaneously. It's not like a storyboard, like you like when we do a music video, we're like, oh, this is how this is gonna look. This is that we got to get like by the minute and what verse we're gonna have this clip here and this clip here, and we're shooting for this and shooting for that. With the documentary style, usually when I'm halfway through or 3/4 of the way through, I figured out who the characters are, and because you're probably there for one character to start with. They're driving you to do this story, but there's always support characters. And just one little piece we did, or I shot on my own, and it was about Native American speaker Pauline Flett, and just kind of fell backwards into this one because I got a journalism story to do some photographs and met her, and then recorded some. Basically, this was a really botched assignment. So I got to this assignment and had just my camera, went only to take still images, and got there. And then somebody said like, oh, we need to get this on audio. We need to record this just so we can send it to the writer. The writer didn't show up. They were in Seattle. They couldn't come. This is before COVID really was flexing. So I just took this thing out, recorded the thing next to our this woman. And she's a 93-year-old speaker of Salish, the Salish language, the Spokane Salish language. So the dying, otherwise would have been a dying language a few years ago. And she, since then they've opened a school and all this stuff. So I was there photographing her, and it wasn't a long thing. We just, kind of got done with that really quickly and within an hour. And I had this interview, and then took it home and thought, gosh, what an amazing person. And she lives up in Welpinit with her son and other family members. And I really want to go back, and I want to see her house because they were saying, because she had saved this language, she had something like 50 grandkids, and somebody said like, oh yeah, she does all her transcription work at her house in front of a wall of family. And I thought of these pictures of her family. I thought, what an amazing picture that is. I have to have that picture. So we went back out there, bothered them multiple times until I got invited out, and just got to go once. And it turned out that Pauline was sick, and then she had, like, that's what I was saying, she was listening, she had the humidifier on. And so I did some video knowing that this might be the only time I got to do some video. I took the one picture I really went there for, and came back, and on that trip met a different person in the car who was going there with us to get some translations done. This woman is like one of the last speakers of this language. She knows things that nobody else knows. So she's translating language every night, sometimes until 4 a.m, these questions people have. It's just like stunning that this is happening in our world, right? And happening just down the street, and it's the story that nobody knows. So I, just getting a couple things and thinking, man, I would love to go back out there. And then COVID hit, and then she ended up having a blood clot in her intestines or something, and dying. And she was 93 years old. So it wasn't like, it's not the tragedy of, a young person dying, but it's the tragedy of her story of who she was and who she was to the tribe and the language. But watching that, I forget my original point now. What was I going? Well, what were we talking about? We were talking about
the way you edit in your head while you're
so
shooting.
On that story, this is the point. It wasn't until I went back the second time that I knew that so on the original audio recording, she had sung this Amazing Grace song, and that she was translating. She sung it in Salish, but it was just awful quality. It was just awful quality, like from across the room on this thing, and that's all we had. And then when I had gone back, she was coughing, and she couldn't really sing, and so we didn't ask her to push her to sing. And so I knew going home that was something like, oh, it's such a good portion of it. But then I met one of the women that went with us on the way out, and she was just talking the whole time, in the car, just talking about Salish language and saving the language and all these things. And I was like, this is the audio. I have to record this audio. It's such good stuff. And so I knew she was the character. Because the other woman was really quiet, who I was with, and even though I tried to follow her, she wasn't saying much. And so the second person who came in, was a little older and had more life experience and was just talking constantly the whole time. She had these awesome things she would say, every so often. So I basically just kept the camera running on her in the car. And it's like, I couldn't just stop her later and ask her to say those things. Like, hey, could you just tell me that thing you said in the car a second ago? It's like, it was only worked when she was impassioned with it. So it took me, I knew she would be important, and then getting that footage back in. So I really ended up focusing and asking her all the questions after that. I really said, oh, you're the person that's really guiding this story. Because even though Pauline, she had some really great things to say, she also, it was harder to get her to say full sentences and full thoughts and to bring that passion out. And this other woman who really just related so well that ended up being like the person who took us through the storyline, from beginning to end. It's her voice. She starts it, she ends it, and Pauline's in the middle somewhere, kind of like being who Pauline was. So, unfortunately, that documentary wasn't able to continue on, and who knows had we been able to go out if any time in the next year. But it was what it was for its time, and I feel lucky to have even had the chance to do it. But like to your point, or to your question, you don't know, you don't ever know going in what your story is. In the writing degree, like you'll start writing something and you call those first drafts like this is a weird term, but vomit drafts, or just like getting it out. It's like, I gotta say something, I gotta write it, I'm just gonna write until I'm done writing. And then you look at it, you're like, oh, that's bad, but there's some gem in there, and it's probably the last line, dude. It's probably the last line you wrote, or something right in the middle, and you're like, oh, wait a second, that's the beginning. That thing I got to after 3 hours of writing, that's the beginning of the story. That's where this story starts. And that's what's so interesting. I only went twice to see this woman, Pauline, but it wasn't until I really was done shooting that I realized the person who was talking the whole time was the story. Somebody else would have found a different person. I'm sure somebody else going on that thing would have focused on the nephew or, the uncle or something. So yeah, that's it. That's the answer. It's not clear.
So just to let you know, Raj, I have some footage from the first ever Salish language conference that was hosted at the Falls many years ago now. It's still on tape. This was back.
Oh, wow, dude. That's cool.
TV. So
maybe we should get together and we could probably get a couple folks together and get a lot of footage together. That'd be great.
I will find some time in the next couple of weeks and digitize it for you.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
and Eric, can I make one more question before you?
Real quick, and then we got to wrap up because I got my 1:30 classes.
So at the beginning, you were talking about connections and all the connections like that. That's kind of what got you or tend to give you jobs. Mm-hmm. How you not cross that line where you're just like, using that connection a good way, or like kind of, I don't know how to say that in English. Like not being disrespectful, using those connections, because sometimes people kind of think that you're getting advantage of them because they know someone important or something like that. So how do you come across that?
Yeah. Never go into it with the intention of making a client, basically. Don't think of people as clients, and just think of like meeting folks and expanding your network and learning more about folks. And like, people will come around to you. This is a lesson that I'm still learning, but people will come around to you for the work you make long before they come. They'll see you and they'll seek you out and they'll learn about you from a distance. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard about me before, and I don't expect you have, but I've come to classes before and people will say, oh yeah, I've seen your work, or I've seen this. And it's like, oh wow, your work does live out there without you. It lives out there in replacement of you. And you don't know who's seen it, and sometimes your name's not even attached to it when somebody's seen it. So later they see it and they say like, oh yeah, I saw this video one time. I didn't know it was you. Like, so that stuff is your work is separate from you. It is what you are, it's who you are, but don't become like, it's not you. Right. And and when you meet people, back to what you're asking, like, I don't know, just be yourself, man. You seem like a really good quality person. Like, just like, be honest and say like, this is what I'm after. This is where I'm at. Like, understand where you are too. Don't inflate your value or inflate your quality. People will watch your quality and they'll know you were lying to them, or they'll think you're delusional, right? Like, I never tried to speak about anything having to do with like, oh, my work's great. I would never say something like that. I was like, just watch it. It's like, I don't know what it is. What is it to you? I don't know if you like it. If you hate it, like, you're not going to hire me. It could be I could think it was great. You might hate it. So, I think it just comes with, just going into any relationship, any friendship relationship, like, hey, I just want to know who you are. And if that person sees something in you, I mean, always be sharing, say like, oh man, I'd love you to check this out. Here's my Instagram, whatever, like, do that stuff. That's so important for people to see it, and you do have to push people a little bit because other people will never watch your work. So, but it's also being strategic and, not being completely egotistical about what you can do, Yeah. Not to say any of you guys are, but yeah, having that.
So you have 3 Instagram accounts?
No, I actually have 3. I have my personal one called I Don't Write. You guys can be on that one if you want. That's more personal, like kind of snapshots. And then there's the quote professional photography one, which is the Rajah Bose, and then Factory Town. So yeah.
So you just
Instagram's a nightmare, man.
You just validated what I've been telling students, is that you really need to have separate Instagram accounts for different bodies of work or different categories of work, just because people expect you're going to provide their fix of a certain kind of style of work on Instagram, and you can't show all of it in just one account, I think.
Yeah, unless you're a celebrity, you got to have multiples to do, like, especially if you want to have anything personal on your pages, make a personal page, and just like, if you already made a personal one, just like, it kind of sucks because if you start a new one, it'll have 0 followers and most people won't jump over to your quote professional one, but you'll build that up with a totally new set of folks. Like, you have to believe that new people will come to your professional work that wouldn't come to your quote personal stuff. And so, yeah, having friends, and, if you got 1,000 friends on this network, you want them all on the other one. It's like, you're not trying to get numbers here. You're trying to get people that actually care about what you do and want to know more about you as a photographer, cinematographer, whatever, And if it's just a bunch of your friends on there, they're all going to thumbs up and give you fire signs, fire emoji you, like, all day. You want people who really care and really know to be on those other pages. And like, that's a hard pill to swallow if you're just starting out. My pages don't have that many. So like, just don't try to get bogged down about that numbers game.
All right, everybody. Yeah. Thank you so much. And seriously, I'll get in touch with you soon, Raj, about getting you some footage. But this has been a special presentation from Spokane Falls Community College Digital Media Production Degree Program. For more information, please go to our website at www.spokanefalls.edu.